Just put the gun down. Okay.
We are talking about the horror movie Against the Night. This one written and directed by Brian Calvaro. It stars Frank Whaley. He's going to be the most recognisable name here, but he is only in the kind of the beginning and the end of this movie. Other than that, it's more or less a cast of unknowns. This movie is also known as the AMITYVILLE Prison. There you go. And it's a partial found footage movie, partial traditional shot, and is essentially about a group of young adults, teens, as they are kind of enjoying a house party from one of their members of one particular night, and one guy decides that it will be a good idea to visit this kind of local abandoned prison to kind of maybe film like a most haunted kind of sort of TV show, I guess, a web series. And he's kind of, this is his thing, this is what he wants to do. When they go there, they find they might not be alone, but what is the threat here? Is it some type of paranormal, ghostly activity? Is it aliens, as one of the kind of the group suggests? Or is it simply meth dealers that are kind of holed up in this, this building doing their business? Or something else entirely different? Well, you'll have to watch the movie to find out, so let's discuss. This movie does one of those tropes that I absolutely hate and I will always point out in these reviews, and that is showing you a scene right at the end of the movie and then kind of backtracking in a kind of a flashback. I do not understand why this trope exists. It shows you who the last survivor is, and you're waiting for everyone else to die up until that point. It's not right at the end, you know, it doesn't show you the very end of the movie. There's a kind of a few scenes after that, but nonetheless, you know ultimately who lives and who dies. It absolutely deflates tension in these films. I cannot understand why filmmakers think this trope is a good idea. I absolutely hate it. But anyway, outside of that, let's talk about what works and what doesn't work. First of all, what worked for me, I did get the impression that this group of people did seem like a genuine group of friends. Even I would say the dialogue does seem somewhat improvised at times. And although that might sometimes mean people go off on a little bit of a tangent, it does mean that the actual feeling of kind of camaraderie is quite genuine between this kind of group of people. There are clearly lines that are written, and as the movie kind of goes on, there's some of the lines of dialogue aren't particularly good, I will say, we'll come on to that again, but I actually quite like their general feeling of a group of friends that do seem quite pretty like a tight group of friends that you can imagine being real people. The actual location shooting here, this kind of prison, I'm not quite sure where it's shot, and it's set in Philadelphia, so I'm not quite sure where they shot it, but it looks really good. I mean, this building that they've shot it in looks suitably menacing, suitably oppressive, and does look particularly kind of like a real scary place where you probably wouldn't want to be trapped of an evening. This movie does try to do something a little bit different and keeps you guessing about what the actual threat is. And like I've mentioned, there are a few different kind of like solutions or kind of potential antagonists that are offered throughout the movie. But you're not quite sure what's going on, obviously, until obviously everything is revealed when it is revealed. But nonetheless, you are sort of kept guessing. So it does add a little bit of a kind of originality, a little bit of spice into that through the movie. The acting I all thought was pretty good as well. Like I mentioned, this cast do seem so genuine. You do kind of buy into their plight a little bit. But kind of moving on from that, going into a negative with them, and I'm going to stick with the cast. A few things about this that I have mentioned. So when we're in this kind of prison, there are some quite horrible lines of dialogue, some kind of like lines that are clearly not improvised and kind of said by the actors that don't seem particularly natural, and kind of take throughout the movie. The other thing is that they cast a group of people that some of them look quite similar, and when you're in this dark environment, you just can't tell who's who. So you're not really sure who's dying, but that's based on a number of issues. A, that a lot of the actors look the same. This is why sometimes it's worth casting with some diversity in one respect, because you have here, I think there's about 3 or 4 female characters, and 4 of them are kind of skinny brunette girls, white brunette girls, and it's difficult to see in a low light film who's who. And even the guys, they're all kind of like white guys who, you know, with brown hair. It's difficult to see who's who, but that's also a reflection of maybe lack of characterization, or maybe the cast is a little bit big, because it's a fairly big group that kind of go into this you know, this prison. So maybe have a smaller group, perhaps, so you can kind of get a better handle on who is who. So it's difficult to say. The other problem that also kind of goes hand in hand with this movie is really dark. I mean, obviously, on one hand, you can say, yeah, it adds to the authenticity of a movie, because if you're going to go into an abandoned prison, it's going to be damn dark. So yes, that adds an element of realism to the movie, absolutely. But the problem is that it's adding to the problem that you can't really tell which characters are which, and it's frustrating outside of the characters. You simply can't see what's going on, because you kind of hear things, and you kind of see shadows, etc. And there's obviously something in the dark, but it's too dark to actually see what's going on, and it becomes a little frustrating. So there's that. To be honest with you, this film is you know, it's fairly well made, but maybe somewhat generic in places. I don't feel it kind of breaks any new ground, and I feel when the reveal happens at the end, it seems a little silly, considering that the possible you know, sort of the theories that are floated out there that could be this threat. When you actually see what it is, and then when you consider what's actually been going on, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And you're thinking, why is that? You know, it just doesn't make a lot of sense, and ultimately becomes a little silly. Obviously, I've mentioned my little tirade there about having the kind of scene, you know, that is based at the end of the movie at the beginning. Hate that shit. Please stop doing it. But there you go. So overall, this movie is, you know, it's okay. It's actually filmed in partial found footage and partial kind of traditional sort of camera angles. So it's just kind of a little bit of a hybrid, not exactly a found footage film, but it kind of bothers me that they go into found footage mode when there's something happening, so therefore you can't see anything. But when there's kind of nothing happening, a lot of the time it's in the traditional kind of like cameras. So it kind of feels like a little bit of a cheat. They use the found footage to deliberately obscure what's going on. You know, it's okay. It's okay for a kind of, you know, a kind of ghostly, spooky, abandoned building, which I am a big fan of. But there are films that have done this better. The worst thing for me, like I've said, is realistically, it's the kind of the really being able to not identify what's going on and who's doing what. That to me was frustrating, and it takes you out the movie, because you simply don't identify with the characters that are before you. Even though I think some of the acting was quite good, because of the lighting, because of the lack of development, and because they cast people who don't really, you know, look kind of similar, and it's difficult to sort of see in a kind of a dark environment, you don't really ever invest too much into the characters. So I will give this movie a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.